Welcome to the Texas Music Museum's conversation on East Austin Blues with Matthew Robinson in conjunction with our exhibit on Austin Blues history at our location on East 11th Street, and with support of the Cultural Arts Division of the City of Austin Economic Development Department. My name is Jason Mellard. I'm a board member at the Texas Music Museum, as well as the director of the Center for Texas Music History at Texas State University in San Marcos. Joined today by living blues guitar legend in a city that is renowned for its blues guitar, Mr. Matthew Robinson. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it.
All right, yeah.
How you feeling?
I'm feeling really good. Thank you for asking.
Excellent.
Yes,
Excellent. So I thought we might start at the beginning, as it were. The Austin music scene is one that these days tends to be built out of a lot of people who came from elsewhere and were drawn to Austin by the music, but you are an artist who has a unique and different perspective as someone who grew up with and in this scene. So I thought we might start by talking a little bit about growing up in East Austin in the 1950s. What were the neighborhoods like? What was the community like? Businesses and that kind of thing.
Sure. Before I get started, before I forget, I would like to tell you that I'm gonna donate my Matthew Robinson guitar that was special made for me by John Hendricks from Boston many years ago, and I toured all overseas with it. And I'm gonna put it to the Texas Blues Museum.
That's fantastic news. Live, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
That's so excited. Thank you.
And way back in the day, I was born and raised in a community called St. John College Heights, which was a Black settlers community, but it was all types of people there. And it was a wonderful time for me growing up out there in the country. I was sheltered from city life and all that because I hadn't been exposed yet. But I remember all of my father's brothers. There was 7 of them, and my father was the youngest, and they all were preachers, except for my father. So I guess I should have been a preacher according to the way it should go in family, but I have a lot of cousins and stuff that are preachers, but I don't know. I just didn't realize how much blues I had in me until many years later. But I can really say I was really born with the blues and God's hand on me, because when I was born premature, and I wasn't supposed to live through the night. And my mother called my grandmother and she said, just bring that boy home. And she had bought a pair of shoes and she brought me home in that shoebox she had. And my grandmother, with some flour and whatever mixture she had, helped me. And here I am today, 74 years old, when I wasn't supposed to be, So I didn't really know I had the blues yet. And being from a gospel background and family and all the preachers and stuff, to me, I was taught blues was not, it was like the devil's type of music or something. And I really was just going along with that. It never occurred to me how much blues I really had in me and how much I really liked it. Not saying I didn't like other music, because I did, but growing up in the church, singing gospels, and all of the people singing a cappella first, because when the piano came into the church, it divided the neighborhood back in the day. So half of the people were saying the devil's gonna come into this church, do this piano. But I was small then and didn't realize that this is things that my mother and my grandmother and all of the people would be telling me stories later. But finally, mother moved to town, which we called town. And it was right there on Chicon and Rosewood. And it was the projects. And I think it's a Booker T. Washington projects. But I was in the 3rd grade, went to Blackshear Elementary School. And I didn't realize it at the time, but several of the people that we played with, like shooting marbles or whatever and all of that, later on in life, many, many years later, we turned out to be musicians. And one thing led to another. And from that journey, I've met so many talented men and women, some famous, some not famous, some going to be famous. I mean, to me, it was a wonderful thing. But if that's just too much information, you just let me know.
Oh, no, that's absolutely the kind of thing that we're looking for. That, these are still pillars of the community, Blackshear Elementary, the public housing on Chicon and Rosewood, which, was some of the first public housing built in the nation. It's still
because Blackshear Elementary was just right across the street behind Houston Tillerson right there. And back in those days, being from the country, I didn't know as much as all the city kids did. And I do remember running home every day, calling all my sisters' names: Sandra, Glenda, Carolina, open the door. And I'd slide in, they shut the door, rock me, hitting the door. Blah, 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 blah. They were rocking me home every day till the 6th grade. Excuse me. And then I found out later on that a lot of those people were my relatives, and we didn't even know it at the time. And I wasn't the fastest runner in the school, but in the afternoon, the fastest runner in the school could not catch me. But it was all in fun. I don't think they were really trying to hurt me. It's just that I was being teased from being from the country, which I was proud of that anyway. But, you go to the city and all of that. But right there off of Airport and 51st Street, back in the day, was called Ridgetop. And that's what we called town. And then when we went down on Congress, we called that the big city. This is back in the day when 35 was a dirt road, one going north, one going south, and it was called East Avenue. So we way back up in the day. It looks nothing like it did back then. It's wide open spaces, and we used to go hunting and fishing and camping and hiking. I mean, wonderful thing. I thought everybody did that like us, and sing and stuff in church. I thought everybody did it. And I think maybe most of the people did, no matter what denomination or religion. Everybody probably had a similar thing growing up in church. Maybe not everybody, but the way we were thinking, and we was thinking everybody was just like us. I didn't know that singing could be something very special. And we all did it. And it's just led to one thing for another, because when we were small growing up, we used to sing when we were, sad. We would sing when we were happy. I remember one time I had made me a bow and arrow, and I was, pretty small. And I saw this bird up on the telephone post. Well, actually, it was by the telephone post, but it was a China berry tree. And I shot to hit the bird, but I missed and hit the little baby bird. And I cried, my sisters, we all cried, and we cried and cried. And we decided to have a funeral for that baby bird, which we did. We were all little. And the spirit must have gotten on us, because by the time the service was over, we were imitating the way they did at church, and we were just little kids. and didn't realize it was people on both sides of the streets going all directions was hearing us having church, and they were just parked at that maze, little kids having the spirit of a, gospel like that. And some of them might not even know, but that hurt me dear to my heart to have killed that baby bird. So I'll never forget that.
So if gospel is one of the pillars of your early musical influences, what other early musical memories do you have related to blues or secular music? When did that start to come into your life?
Well, actually, I even said one time, I am not gonna be playing no so-and-so blue, but later on, I started out liking jazz and end up into funk and fusion. And I like all types of music, as long as it's kind of sound. I call it swinging when it sounds good, but it doesn't matter. But I had so many experiences. In my first professional experience, I had joined a group called the Mustangs. And that turned out to be a great stepping stone for me in my life, because I had moved from the east side. We were up on top of Hungry Hill on Springdale. And it just opened up a lot of doors for me. I didn't realize until I met those guys that it was different ways to live life and have fun, and you didn't have to, be like a little thug and all that kind of stuff.
And this is around 64? Is this in high school?
Yes, and it started in high school. But what had happened was I heard this music and I followed it one day to this house. And when I came in there, they were practicing to be the Mustangs. I don't know if that was going to be the name then or not. But anyway, I was just listening to them, and I go there every day. I really enjoyed it. And one day they had a song, I can't remember the name of the song, but the singer couldn't sing it. And I said, well, maybe I think I can sing that song. And they said, well, who are you? I said, well, Matthew Robinson. I just live up the street with my aunt and them up there. And they said, well, why don't you give him a try? Let him see what he can do. And I nailed it. And they said, you in the group now. So that's how that started. But it was more to it than that, because our teacher, one of the teachers at the Keeling High School, ended up being our manager. But before that, she called us little thugs, and she didn't want her son, who ended up playing sax with her. She didn't want him hanging with us. Just mischief kids, doing stuff, nothing horrible. But so when we wanted to rehearse, we had to wait till 12 o'clock at night. It's when Charles' parents worked that time, so the house was free, and we would sneak him out of his bedroom window, and we would go down there and rehearse. And we did that for a long time. And we finally got good. Well, then people started talking about the Mustangs. And one day we woke up, and there our picture was on the front page of the Austin Statement. We knew it was over then, but but anyway, we got together and we were talking about it, and we said, well, this is gonna be it. Our mother's gonna, she's gonna tear this all up. That's what he was telling us. And she called and said, we're gonna have a meeting. We knew that was the end. And when we got there, she said, you all need a manager. I want you all to start dressing. Do not curse in front of grown people. Treat girls right and stuff like this. and this and that. And we were so amazed because we thought she was going to cut us loose. And she brought us together. What a wonderful time that was. And from there on, we just blossomed. From then on, we were just so happy and being together and being in school together and just having fun, just kids in the neighborhood. It was a wonderful thing. And just remembering it just make me so happy, just thinking back on the joy times that it brought. Not only just me and the group, but people got joy out of that. The way I see it, we were kind of like leaders in a way, because one time we went to the gig and everybody, all the males in the club were dressed exactly like us. So I didn't know who was in the band. But I was saying that is some powerful statement right there.
Yeah, the Mustangs were a very important and successful group in Austin in the 1960s. I think you won a battle of the bands with them. You got a record out, a 45 record. You opened for some big acts around that time too, right?
Yeah, especially here in Austin, it was such an amazing time because on the Vodka there was a club and it was called the Vulcan Gas Company. Mm-hmm. And that's when I got an opportunity to meet all of these people that I really love, like Big Mama Thornton, Jimmy Reed, Zachary Dax, Johnny Winters. I mean, this was on and on. And I'm just a little kid, we're young. We don't know what really is going on and all that, but we knew it. So I wanted to meet Big Mama Thornton so bad. And I knew she was going to play. We were going to open the show up. So we were in there rehearsing. And the way the club was designed, the light would shine through the top of the loft thing down, but everything else was kind of dark. And I looked over and I saw this, what I thought at the time was a huge man with a cotton picking hat on and some overalls, way over in the shadows. I didn't pay no mind. We kept on practicing and all of that. But when we finished, I walked by and she said, "Young blood." And I looked over. I didn't know it was a she at that time. I'm still thinking it's a man. And she said, "You got something. Just keep that up." And the first time in my life, my head wasn't, wide as Congress and long as Trail Street. I just said, "Thank you," which was the best thing I could have ever done, because that was Big Mama Thornton. And what had happened that night, we opened our show and all that, and they called her up there, and I said, "Where have I seen that person before?" I just still didn't dawn on me that was her who gave me that advice. And she came out, and the first thing she did was got on the drums, and she beat those drums for 45 minutes, just tore them up. And I'm going like, I didn't know she can do something like that. And then she grabbed the harmonica and she started playing the harmonica for 45 minutes. I'm like, whoa. She had everybody going crazy back, and then it was hippies and stuff everywhere. And before you knew it, the band was up there, and boy, did she rock that house. I'm telling you, then it dawned on me, that's Big Mama Thornton. I wanted to meet her. I already met her and didn't know it. So that was one of the joys of my life on that one.
Yeah, and not only met her, received what's a terrific compliment from her, right? How special is that? Yeah.
Very special, and I still cherish the day, and God rest her soul, but I still love her dearly, and her music that she left behind is for everyone to enjoy and imitate if you can. But she was really something powerful woman, I'm telling you.
Yeah, so Vulcan Gas Company, which was, like I said, sort of a hippie venue that was in the middle of town in the late 60s, was an important stage for the Mustangs.
And one thing about it, later on, it moved and it was called the Armadillo headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, starting in 1970s.
That's when I met a lot of other musicians. The Oh, I can't even think of some of them. Count Basie. I mean, the
Oh,
great
wow.
guitarist. And, to me, it was like a magical daydream, sort of like I was just going in there. I didn't have no money. I couldn't get in. And I saw this old man get off the bus and he was joking. He patted the ground with one foot. He said, "Is that you, girl?" And I looked over, it was Count Basie. And he saw me over there. And I was just standing over there and he spoke and we talked. And I said, "Well, I'm just going to be outside, listening because I can't afford to, buy the ticket, but I can hear fine out here." He said, "You come with me." And he took me backstage there with him the whole time. I couldn't believe it. It was just something magical about it. And I'm going like, man, how lucky can I get? If you can call it lucky, I just call it some kind of intervention that was way larger than I am. So
I know, to be backstage at the Armadillo World headquarters with Count Basie.
yes,
And
that was
I
it.
want to draw up some of that 70s stuff in a few minutes, but let's rewind a little to the sort of the 60s and the Mustangs and your early musical education. Because there are some other venues I want to kind of bring into this conversation and thinking about East Austin blues.
Yeah, it was kind of strange because on 11th Street we had Charlie Playhouse,
Mhm.
And Southern Dinette and all of that was there. And I remember Charlie was already segregating the club he owned by letting the college kids come over and welcome them into the club, which because it was 35 was like the dividing line. East of 35 was like the black part of town, and the west side was like the white part of town. And that's how I went, this is amazing things. But we ended up playing, I don't think we were the first people that were able to go across, on the white side and play. But it was very, very, very a lot of fun for us. And it was very important too, even though I didn't realize it at the time, being so young and just, happy-go-lucky, not really knowing what's happening. Just the joy of, dancing and people having fun and enjoying it. And I was going like, man, this is really something. And I'm still into a little space where I'm thinking, is this me? I'm in pinch myself or something. It was so many things. Most of them I can say the majority of the time were just wonderful. And I met a lot of different artists. I remember at the Victory Grill back in the day, before Bobby Bland was famous, he would come to the blues contest and win it every time he would come.
I would bet, yeah.
And they'd say, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm Bobby Bland." Nobody knew who he was then, but everybody know now.
And so Victory Grill and Charlie's Playhouse, both on 11th there. And then there's another venue that I think plays a role in some of your musical education. So Charlie had another venue further east, right? The Ernie's Chicken Shack.
Yeah, that was like an after hours club there. And Blues Bar Hubbard played at both venues. It was like the house band. And I learned a lot of things from all of those guys. And it was just to see them and see, like when we were growing up, mother didn't allow us to curse or nothing like that. So I made a shoe shine box and went down to Look Glorious on Rosewood, which was a real dangerous place. You could get cut or shot. Yes, but I went in there because I wanted to smell what beer smelled like, and maybe I'd hear somebody say a curse word or something. So I made a shoe shine box to go in there, and then would say, "Hey, look, boy, what are you doing in here?" And I said, "Shine, Mr. Shine, Shine." They said, "Oh, he's the shoe shine boy." So I was shining shoes, boy. I was shining them. And when I finished to go to the next person, they said, hey, you forgot your 2 bits, which was a quarter. But that's how bad I wanted to do it, but I could not let mother know I had been in there, you know, smelling beer and hearing cursing, because she would have put a stop to that.
And Blues Boy Hubbard seems like such a glue of this era of the blues scene, you know, and plays a role in your life over time. And I
He
think it's
really
important that
was.
yeah.
He really was. And one thing about it that I should let everybody know is when we moved to the projects, I'm on my knees shooting marbles with all of the kids. We were little kids. And we hear this guitar player playing, you know, in the project somewhere. And he was visiting some friends or something. He did it quite often. And come to find out many years later, it was Blues Boy Hubbard. And not only that, we ended up going on a tour together in Europe. And it was just a wonderful time. And I really appreciate Eddie Stout for getting me started in that venture, because that was, I could not believe a country boy picking cotton could end up in Europe singing and people clapping and all that and getting paid. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, so this guy that would have been leading the band after hours at Ernie's Chicken Shack, Blues Boy Hubbard, and you who start going to these nightclubs, you know, acting, you know, bringing your shine stands so that you can get in, you find a
Yeah.
way to be touring to these, you know, adulating crowds in Europe. The two of you, I think, did you call yourselves the dynamic duo, Blues Boy Hubbard and Matthew
Yes,
Robinson? Yeah.
that's what we called ourselves. It was like my mentor. He was the old master, and I was the young kid coming up. And I really enjoyed that. You know, that was something. And when that was happening, it was just so much all at once for me. And I'm having just like a one-track mind trying to get this going, because I knew the more I learned, the less I knew. So I'm still teaching. I'm self-taught, so I'm still doing that today. So now I realize what to work on next. But music is very hard. Once you have that, you don't seem like it is, but it is, and it's forever. You know, it's gonna always be something you can learn. And I learned not to be so very hard on myself about it, but just take my time and do what I'm gonna do right now. And that way I can have a little peace of mind and not to block myself, and just be free to enjoy it and let it come through me. Because they say, well, Matthew, what are you doing? I said, I'm playing from feelings. So I don't know if they understand what that is or not, but I have to feel it.
Right, right. So back to, so going on from the Mustangs, one of the next really important acts in the Austin scene that you're involved with in the 70s is James Polk and the Brothers, which is such a stacked lineup of artists. Would you have been in there at the same time as like W.C. Clark and Martin Banks, Angela Straley? It's quite a crew that he pulled together.
Yes, that was something. John Reed, who was a guitarist on that, W.C. Clark, myself. Don Lupo was a bass player originally, but back in those days, if you got caught with a seed of marijuana or something, you could get 20 years. So he got caught one time with a joint and he split town. We haven't seen or heard from him since. But Donnie Schultz, who was playing trumpet at the time, moved to bass, and that clicked. And it was Martin Banks, Angela Straley was in there. I mean, it was such a magical time with all of these heavy people. And when I first went to Dr. Polk, I had this I found out later it was a card dictionary, guitar cards. It said 1,001 cards. Well, I learned every one of those cards. And to this day, I haven't used about 4 of them. But what it did was it made me able to, between John and WC, I mean, I could fit in because I knew all of those positions and I didn't realize that. But Polk did, and he got me into the group then because he knew I could sing too. And I hadn't been singing for a while, and so he was trying to get me back up into that, which it did work. But it was such a joy to be on the road with Dr. Polk, and that's where I learned a lot of things, from them. And but I do have holes in my theory. So when
Yeah, he's someone who sort of moved back and forth between the jazz and blues worlds. The Texas Music Museum hosted a conversation between him and one of our board members and jazz artist, Pamela Hart. So if people don't know Dr. Polk, can you tell us a little bit about who he is and how he fits into this stuff?
He wonderful man. We started out, and he see what to get his doctrine, you have to be able to play all of the instruments in the orchestra. So that was kind of our job. We didn't know it, but he learned how to play sax and bass, and because he's one of the best drummers and bass players you ever meet. And people don't realize it. Maybe some do, but some don't. And he did that on the road with us. We had us a bus and all of that, and we traveled, and that's how we helped him. He got to play all of these instruments, and to tell you the truth, he was really good on all of them, and especially on keyboards. And I think early on, he had a gig with Ray Charles, and he was going to play, but Ray Charles had to let him go because he was just too good. I don't know the complete story about it. He's, you have to get out of here, But he's an amazing guy. And I always love him dearly, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have started on the journey. I'm so hard-headed on doing things that it took him and WC, Martin Banks. In fact, we call Martin Banks Bubba because we knew his mom and everything where he stayed, but he left and went to New York and got famous. And they wrote that song for him, Remember Mr. Banks. But every time he would come back home and we would jam and all of that. And so I said, Bubba, talking about Martin Banks, I said, could you show me how you approach fourths? Because trumpets and sax and piano and other instruments is different when you're doing guitar. It's not like that where other people play. And he smiled at me and said, sure, I tell you that. But he passed away before he could do it. But anyway, I'll treasure that thought that he said, yeah, I will show you. And, just hate he didn't get to do it.
So at this time, I guess with James Polk, that would have been when some of those Armadillo gigs were happening. Antones was coming around at the same time by the late 70s.
Yes.
What was it like to be, an artist who came out of this East Austin blues scene when there's this new chapter happening with Antones? So these artists like yourself, like W.C. Clark, who have these deep roots in the community, and then there's sort of this new attention in these new stages. What was that like at that time in the 70s and 80s?
Well, for me, it was kind of strange, but still joyful. I remember the first Antones was on 6th Street. And this is way back in the day. And then later on, it moved to Guadalupe, and then it had one on the Baca. Now I got one on 5th Street. But it was always something, and Anton was the kind of guy, he loved blues people. And he would go out of his way to help you, if he could, and he would if he could. And if so many people, famous and yet to be famous, have a lot to thank for Mr. Anton.
And people too, like you mentioned Eddie Stout earlier, who's done a lot of work with his dial tone records to help
Yeah,
preserving.
and he the first one got me going overseas, and I did do some dial tone records and all of that. It was Eddie, I think, was born and raised in Austin too.
Okay.
So I was on the east side and he was on the west side. I think that's how it went. But we finally met, but at the time we didn't know we both were born and raised here. And I was found out that later. But that's just another one of the amazing things that, some kind of divine intervention pulled us together and we took off and we toured, everywhere, Japan, every city in Germany, you know.
Did you go down to Brazil too? Have I heard that?
Yes, Sao Paulo. I mean, all of those, that was some wonderful times for me. I just couldn't believe it, pinching myself again, so here I am. I didn't even think I would get out of the United States. But yeah, Eddie, he did a lot for me and I appreciate it.
How do you like those audiences abroad? What is it like bringing American blues to them, and how do they receive it?
Oh, they receive it so wonderful, and they treat you just like you're a king. And if you're a woman, a queen, I mean, they just really love it. They really understand. And here we're moving so fast and we got so many different things. You can be walking down and this little kid about 6 years old saying, let me see that guitar and tear you up. I mean, but over there they just really just love it. Well, I remember one time I was playing in Sao Paulo, and this lady came up and he said, Mr. Robinson, I'm watching you as you perform. And all of these people down here are crying and stuff like that and everything. And, and I kind of sniggled at that because at first I was thinking that too. I got up on stage and they was crying. I said, I sound so bad. Let me get off the stage. And they said, no, Mr. Robinson, that's not the case. That's tears of joy. We have been telling them how it was, and now they see the real thing, and it just brought so much joy to them. And I said, oh my goodness. So that made me feel proud there. I said, my goodness. So it is appreciated. And realizing I still had so far to go, they liked how far I was then. So that was real important to me.
What a moment. That's really powerful stuff. And speaking about this, like where you are in your journey, I'm an historian and I work with the museum, so of course I'm interested in digging all these stories about East Austin in the 50s and the music scene in the 60s and the 70s. But part of being a living guitar legend is that you are an active artist. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the work that you're doing now. What is your band like now? If people are looking to hear you, where are some of the places that you play in Austin today? And what do you think about Austin Blues now?
Well, I mean, everything changes, but blues is forever and it bleeds off into a lot of different things. But I have a residency that I play every last Saturday of the month at Seaboys on Congress and, South Congress. And I have other ventures that I do play, but I'd like people to come and visit me there. Seaboys is one of the last great blues places you can go and really get full of blues and the joy of it. And you just won't believe the talented people that play there. And I'm just proud to be playing in there and being there to see some of the great ones. Like, to me, Jimmy Vaughn was really a special guy. I knew him before I really got famous and all of that, but things happen in life. One person go down this road and it's a split to this side and you go down this road. But after all those years, he and I are still doing it. So that's something special for me. And that's why I love Seaboys. And I like for you all to know, to come down there and support us at Seaboys. And not only just me, everybody that play there. We need the support. The pandemic had kind of busted stuff up for a minute and we're trying to get back. And we need all the people to just help us do that. That's my blues plea.
Yeah, Seaboys is definitely a place that makes me realize that we're spoiled here in Austin. I know that it's a place that if I take blues fans who are visiting from outside of town, they can't believe the people they can see on stage in that small venue. People like yourself, people like Jimmy Vaughn, that, Austinites need to do more to get out and support those spaces while we still have them, because not everyone has spaces and artists like y'all coming out to places like Seaboys.
I remember one time in Seaboys, a band came up to me and was saying how much they enjoyed it. And then I found out that there was a party of 5 and they were from overseas. And they were saying they were trying to find some authentic blues. And someone told them about Seaboys and they stopped and then they said, that's the best they've ever seen, here or there. And I said, wow, this is really something special again. And I thanked them. I didn't want to just sit there and talk, and all that about it. But, sometimes you can blush, but most of the time I'd be ready to cry. So I got to get out of there.
So one more history thing, because you brought up Jimmy Vaughn. When would you have gotten to know the Vaughn brothers? So would you have crossed paths, say, in the Vulcan Gas Company days or the Mustangs days?
Yeah, it was, and Stevie used to come to the jam session too. That they had the jazz session. Dr. Polk had, and we'd go down there, and he would come down there sometime. Right in the very beginning, he was mostly like a rock and roll type of guy. But later on, he figured out a way to fuse that together with blues, and it just took him straight past the stars. I mean, he was way out there. But anyway, it was a joyful short time that I knew them, but I still can see Jimmy. But we miss his brother dearly. So, I mean, I'm not the only one. Probably everybody in the world, it was just something that we needed to hear and feel that what he was presenting. So that's going to always be with us. But unfortunately, he's gone, and God rest his soul.
And so who are your bandmates now? Who are you playing with, and how long have you known them?
I'm playing with some amazing, talented guys. I have to start off with my bass player because he had just been inducted into the Austin Music Hall of Fame, Harold McMillan. And then, I got so many substitutes, like Saz was substitute for him, and Matthew Broadnax, who plays guitar, wonderful guitar player. Just every time he plays, he gets better. And we have I can't even think of, I got so many substitute players. And then a friend from the Bahamas playing drums, Buddha Mills, hard hitting, I mean, just wonderful. All of these guys play with other people, and they're just shining everywhere that they play. And when we're together, we do the same thing. And it's like my band now, but when it's like that wherever they are. So I can't believe it. I'm playing with all these talented guys. but I really love them dearly, and we have to just keep that going. And I'm learning a lot too.
And
And
I'm
that's
such an
one thing about me.
appreciator of, Harold Macmillan is also a historian and preservationist of all these things that we're talking about.
That's
So
right. I first met him when he first came from New York to Austin. That's when I first met him. And we've been friends and colleagues in different bands from way back then to right now. We still doing.
well, Matthew, I think our time is starting to come to a close here, although I feel like we could keep this conversation going forever and ever more, but I guess we'll just have to ask people to come out to See Boys and catch you between sets if they have other questions. I
Yeah.
really thank you for taking the time with us today to talk about East Austin blues. And I know that I've learned a lot, and those that we share it with will as well. So thank you.
It was my pleasure, and I appreciate the opportunity to do so.
All right. We'll see you around.
You too. Bye.